Longevity Plus would like to thank you for joining our webinar today. Dr. Gary Gordon is an expert on nutrition, mineral metabolism, and anti-aging. He is a consultant to Longevity Plus, where he is responsible for designing effective natural supplements that help to support optimal health. Today, Dr. Gordon will be discussing the effects of GHS for optimal health. Questions will be taken for Dr. Gordon's response today. To ask a question, please use the chat feature on your GoToWebinar control panel, and at the end of this program, Dr. Gordon will begin answering questions. Please note that privacy is kept when you use the chat feature and select staff. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Gary Gordon.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Gary Gordon, and I'm feeling great. That becomes really important to me because unless you go on my website and do a little shopping around and sleuthing around, you won't know how sick I was for so much of my life, that the health I'm enjoying today is unprecedented in my entire life. And at age 76, to finally get healthy, when for the first 30 years of my life I had everything wrong, from total lack of stomach acid to constant narcolepsy to recurring infections and high fevers, and I had absolute splitting headaches, and I could not walk up a flight of steps. I could never participate in sports. I had a congenital heart defect, just the little things. We won't bother to dwell on it, but that's why perhaps I'm so passionate to let those of you who know me know that I am really, for 76 years of age, pretty healthy. But that wouldn't mean anything if you haven't been without health for much of your life, having my heart fail completely by age 29, so I had to close my medical practice. So now that we have answers, as I've covered in previous webinars, and everything that I've been telling you between PEMF and hydrogen, the new H-, which is a miracle, combining with the zeolite, and our unique vitamin C delivery system that supports methylation and does things that no vitamin C has ever done before. But taking all those things, you then have to face reality. I'm 76. So between now and 96, most people lose muscle. That's called sarcopenia. That means loss of muscle. So you need to know that a secret of youth would be to prevent that loss, so that at 96 it's still easy to open the doors. But you see, there's a debate going on, because human growth hormone, which in the initial studies in New England Journal, which I'll show you shortly, clearly showed dramatic benefit in very old people, and no one could really claim that it doesn't work because the validation is there. So if it works, then you're down to another issue. Well, is it safe? Well, obviously, how do you determine safety if you're dealing with a population that no one is replaced in that population? The needed nutrients that I specialize in with Beyond Chelation Improved, and done the detoxification that I specialize in with the oral chelation, the zeolite, the Beyond Fiber, the Bioenergy C, the Zeo Gold, and the Organic Green. So when you say something is unsafe, and they are still talking now about, well, what's the long-term safety? But you know, when you're young, you have high levels of this hormone. When you're old, you have low levels. So I'll let you make your mind up yourself. But obviously, if you're the government and people could spend $1,000 to $2,000 a month taking these human growth hormone shots, which is the only way that mainstream doctors think about. They don't ever think about how to support your own body's natural function of normal hormonal production, and how you can do that, which you're going to learn today. Because what I'm telling you today is so amazing that any athlete that we have ever started on the product called Beyond GHS would pay whatever the price is. If it was $200 a month or $300 a month, they wouldn't care, because if you're an athlete, even casual, you love to beat your own record. If you could only lift 200 pounds, you love to lift 250. If you could only run 2-minute mile, you would want to do 1 minute. The point, whatever you are doing, you'd like to do better. And that's why we have something that sells itself when it's in your hands, because the average person will see simply taking 2 at night if you are 100-pound or less woman, 3 at night if you weigh 140 to 1 plus or you're a man. So, where are we going with this discussion? Well, first of all, I have to warn you that because the Football League is unable to decide for sure what is safe and not safe, what suggests their men are doping, what suggests they're not doping, we're in a little problem here. Because the natural product that I'm describing to you, Beyond GHS, is so real that it will change your measurements of things like testosterone. So you can prove that to yourself, obviously, by getting a free testosterone. You don't want to bother with total testosterone, but anyhow, you could measure yourself. And you would learn that, without a doubt, the natural products like the Tribulus and the Mumio that are in this product are going to raise your levels. So if you are a competitive athlete who's being tested for possible doping, it may be that you are not going to be able to take this entirely natural product until they clarify on a national basis what's permitted, because it seems ridiculous to have herbs that they have been used worldwide for centuries to not be available to you if you are really enjoying your sport and you want to excel at your sport. So with that said, the initial breakthrough was Dr. Rudman, and it was 1990. It was New England Journal of Medicine, and anyone reading this would see that from 61 to 81 years of age, they absolutely could treat these people with injections of human growth hormone for 6 months, and they saw you became leaner, you had more muscle, you got rid of much fat. Isn't that wonderful? And your bones got stronger and more dense. Even the skin was thicker, so it was not sagging, so you looked younger. Anyone looking at the benefits, looking at this article in New England Journal of Medicine, is willing to buy it, and that was the start of the whole anti-aging revolution. Big centers like Cenegenics in Las Vegas, many anti-aging clinics specialize in letting patients get the necessary testing when you're going to use drugs so that you can monitor. And then you raise the issue, well, if you're going to get people that much younger, are you raising levels of testosterone to the level that it's going to cause something bad to happen, like your prostate deciding to suddenly go actively into much more cancer? By age 50, 50% of men have prostate cancer anyhow. But you have to weigh everything on the benefit to risk ratio. So when we talk about this product, you have doctors that are not going to bother to give this to their patients because they don't want to take the time to learn what I'm telling you about. But I'm having to explain to you that in the center of your brain is a very powerful master gland of your whole body. That is your pituitary. And it does control everything from thyroid function to adrenal. It's a pretty powerful gland. Now, since you know I'm hoping to become known as Dr. Detox, because that's my passion, if you look at the dead body of a person and you start trying to figure out where some of the toxins that Dr. Gordon always talks about, where are they concentrated? Because you see, Mount Sinai School of Medicine will test you with 20 tubes of blood and a check from you for $4,900 for 230 chemicals, and you will fail the test. No one's ever passed the test. You're toxic. But the question is, if I take the pituitary out of a dead person, will I find mercury? Answer is yes. If I take the mercury out of that person before he's dead, will I see his pituitary gland function better? Answer is yes. Just like we've had people on thyroid for years who, after enough chelation, their thyroid started functioning on its own because the glands have a high concentration of fat, and fat is where most of the nasty things, dioxin and PCBs and polybrominated diphenyl ethers, the flame retardants I talk about, and the bisphenol A, that's in you, but these are concentrated in the master gland. So this is the hormone that actually is cranked on for insulin-like growth factor that spurs normal growth in bones and tissue. So I want to have normal bones and I want to have normal muscles. And I don't care if I'm 76 now, I want to have them healthy when I'm 96. So I'm not recommending the injections unless you are in deep trouble and you have no bones left and they can't even find a bone to put a nail into. You have a fractured hip or your heart's so massively enlarged it's filling the lung. There are people I will absolutely have go on the actual injections for a short time because I know I can switch you off the injections and do things naturally without any concern about side effects when I switch you over to Beyond GHS. So the growth hormone system from your pituitary supports your adrenal, your thyroid, your follicle stimulating women for the hormone for the women, and luteinizing hormones. So these are all very important hormones, and you can see in this picture that everything in your body is kind of downstream from the brain, where in the center of the brain you've got this important gland, the pituitary, that talks to the hypothalamus and then winds up normalizing the function of all these other hormones in your body. So we've got to recognize, as I said very simply, at age 10 you have a lot of growth hormones, so you can grow fast. At age 20 it hasn't peaked, but if you're over 30 you are on the way down on the downslope. So who listening to this program would be safe taking it? Everybody is safe. That's not the issue. The issue is, are you in a competitive sport where if all of a sudden you start beating all your colleagues and you are all measured once a month in case you've become a Tiger Woods or somebody else that's doing some kind of doping, or Lance Armstrong, accused of doping, if you wind up being accused, obviously, if you were measured first and you had low levels and taking my all-natural support product, things come up into healthy young ranges, they could accuse you that you must be doping. So that's our only downside, is to have mainly the weekend athletes and those of us who are merely taking care of our health and are not professional athletes where we're subject to involuntary on-the-spot testing. So what would happen if you start taking Beyond GHS? Well, these are some of the benefits. You have better muscles so that you can ride up that hill better. You sleep much better. Taking 3 of these pills, everybody, you release your growth hormone right after you go to bed. So if you take 3 of these at bedtime, you sleep much deeper. But more importantly, you get rid of the fat and you start having more muscle. That makes you look better. You like yourself better and you're less tired and you can more do the things you want to do. Sharper memory, better bones. Normalizing your blood pressure, improving your lipid panel instead of having to take a statin forever, which is amazing. We now live in a time frame in which if you tune in on Saturday evening to CNN, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, that would make it 5 on the West Coast, Sanjay Gupta is going to do an hour trying to explain to you the end of heart disease is here, and he's on the same page I am. He's telling you that it's what you do that affects your genes, so that your lifestyle, your exercise, and your diet is what he's talking about. He's not there to sell everybody to be on statins, whereas the rest of the world is all tied to getting rich overnight. They're all making money off of status quo. Attack the cholesterol. What poppycock? Your cholesterol is the building block of all the steroid chemistry, the testosterone and other hormones in your body. The building block is cholesterol, and yet they think that it's perfectly reasonable to lower it artificially with drugs for everybody. They'd like to put it in the water supply. Sanjay Gupta's on my side. He'd like you to learn more about how substantial major dietary change moving a long way away from the standard American diet and really doing something. I'm on my bicycle for almost an hour each morning, so that's uphill and downhill, and so I'm covering 8, 9, 10 miles. And those are things that you need to know change everything, but you have to have the energy to do that. So how am I going to get you the energy? Well, I've discussed my fight program, and I've told you that you have foods you need to stop because you're sensitive to them. You have infections you need to lower. You've got genetic issues, and I've explained to you that one dish issue is called methylation defect, and I said whether or not it's in your family, the amount of hardener in the plastic bottles we drink our water out of is enough to cause you to have non-functioning methylation, so you need trimethylglycine, methylsulfonomethane. These are both in my Bioenergy C, so it's not just a vitamin C delivery system, it is a vitamin C methylation support. So when you see, I've been lucky enough to put together things that work, and I'm so excited to share with you how excitingly well and powerful these are working. So you'll see that we've got in here hypothalamic anterior pituitary peptides that are combined with amino acids that are also like arginine. Everybody's heard of that. But then we put a special coating to protect the material from being broken down by the stomach acids. So when you start to get into this product, you'll see that it has resveratrol in it. Now resveratrol, everybody knows, is a pretty hot story because we think it will act then to extend lifespan by inhibiting telomerase breakdown, by supporting telomerase so that we don't get the shortening of telomeres that mean you're getting close to the end of your lifespan. So you've all heard about it. It's a sirtuin, SIRT1 support. That would be silent information regular. And resveratrol is now added to the incredibly successful product called Beyond GHS. But then you see that we also put tribulus and schizandra and mumio. Now you don't know what mumio is, 99% of you, but if you read up on it, it's also been called shilajit, and it has some interesting history behind it in the Russian military and sports establishment for about 40 years. And it's all natural. Schizandra is nothing very suspicious about this Chinese remedy, but tribulus, everybody can sell you tribulus, but only some tribulus has the real kick, and it's not in the active factor that everybody else thinks is where they want the power. So there is, if you've been on tribulus and it hasn't done anything, forget it, because I'm not selling you tribulus. I am selling you on the idea that a totally natural, synergistic product, which we're discussing with mumio, schizandra, tribulus, and the peptides from the hypothalamic factors, and all of these put together with resveratrol, is changing people's lives. So I want you to see that it mentions in the first slide that it can improve levels of DHEA. Well, DHEA in our country is so cheap, and it's so low when you're older. I would highly recommend any woman at any age taking 25 milligrams from age 40 on, definitely, and men taking 50 milligrams. The more you read about it, but then I take melatonin, but then you see the estrogen controversy. And we'll cover that estrogen so you see it in today's slides, so you understand that I have the safe answer, which is the herbal remedy from Thailand. But without some estrogen-like activity, you will not get to reach your maximum intended useful lifespan, because estrogen, as you will see, proven at Harvard, has helped reverse terminal aging in some rodents, which we'll discuss. Meantime, what are the other things you could take? Let's say that the Beyond GHS is not available. Everybody bought it and we're temporarily out. If we're out, please don't hesitate to use maca, which is absolutely the turnip family, but it grows more at 12,000 foot elevation. It's used widely in South America, the Inca, Peru. But you need to know that it absolutely, when you have the real stuff, on rodents, triples copulative activity. But it does much more than that. It releases free testosterone for men, and it improves normal levels of LH and FSH on postmenopausal women. So it's part of my power drink. It's part of what I want my patients taking. If you want to feel as good as I do at 76, you're going to have to learn that we have a rather hostile environment with a lot of toxins. And the earth is going through changes, as we all are seeing when we have earthquakes and hurricanes. Maybe we can recognize that what I've been saying about the North Pole becoming South Pole was covered in a very scary movie called 2012 last year, in which they talked about the fact that in that crazy mad world that they frightened everybody with, in talking about the end of times, with the end of the Mayan calendar coming up December 21st next year, in that movie they did discuss this little problem about North Pole, South Pole, and they suggested in that particular movie that maybe the South American, the southern pole is going to be located in Wisconsin, and you'll have an aurora borealis there. So it's interesting that we are going through a lot of interesting times. Now, maca, as I've said, has wonderful effects, but one of the major reasons that I like it is because not everybody will eat their broccoli. And broccoli has a glucosinolate that deals with certain toxins that otherwise only maca. So I don't give it just to you because of the wonderful benefit on sexual activity, which is in itself worthwhile, because sexual inactivity leads to premature aging. So I don't mind keeping all of my patients sexually active for as long as they live. But you won't get that without a little bit of support, because these normal values as we age tend to plummet. So the HRT Plus I've discussed in previous things, and I hope that you will visit a webinar that I've done on Puraria mirifica, and I've tried to explain why this powerful, powerful story would add years to the life of any man or woman. Now that's strange. I'm talking about man or woman, and I'm talking about HRT, which you would think stands for Herbal Remedy from Thailand. But since I'm talking about it in the context of women in the change of life, nicely proven with good studies to stop bone loss, stop the hot flashes, stop the vaginal dryness, stop the insomnia, stop the depression. All in all, a pretty good deal. But I, as a man, take it too, because I know where my estrogen receptors are, and they're in all over our body, but in even my prostate, as well as bone. So I'm throwing you a curve here, because I'm saying that I started out with Beyond GHS, and now I'm telling you that if I get you interested in growth hormone, you're going to understand that I have anybody who has a suggestion they need thyroid gets thyroid. And I've just told you that if, without a lot of testing, it's so safe, I recommend low doses of DHEA, and I love 3 milligrams of melatonin at bedtime for anybody that will take it. The only side effect is some people apparently get too active of dreams and can't be happy taking 3 milligrams of melatonin. But what I'm moved on to then is a little bit here is in my FIGHT program, FIGHT is for food, infection, genetics, heavy metal, hormone, toxin. I'm telling you that hormones can start with a master one, and I've now given you a way to handle that safely without having to rely on growth hormone injections, getting expensive prescriptions, spending $1,000 or more a month. But I'm saying that your body is a symphony. If I just play middle C on a piano, it'll get very boring and it'll be upsetting after a while. We need all the 88 keys in that piano keyboard to get the Chopin sonatas, or you sound like all you can play is chopsticks. So I am taking you beyond today's discussion with growth hormone support, and I'm suggesting to you that there's a big story here, and that will be how I can provably have you stay younger. Most scientists are saying that if we could really get this measuring of your telomeres down reproducibly and affordably, that if I can prevent you from having a large number of short telomeres, and the way I do that is I have to make the enzyme telomerase, work more effectively in your body so that you don't start losing these important little inserts on the end of your DNA and the chromosomes inside of your cell that are called telomeres. Now, you'll see on this slide that I mentioned a Harvard study using tamoxifen. Well, tamoxifen is a synthetic estrogen that was used primarily for the treatment of women with breast cancer. So in a sense, it's an anti-estrogen. But they found that this unique substance works at cell receptors and turns off telomerase. So now this is interesting because you will find that Harvard researchers were stunned when they took animals with a gene change that set these rodents up for extremely rapid aging. And they took the animals that were clearly within a week of death. And using this crazy cancer treatment called tamoxifen, synthetic estrogen, they were able to see a regeneration of tissues. Even the testicle on the male rodents came back to healthy looking cells as well as brain cells. In other words, what I'm saying here is that Harvard, knowing that they wouldn't be able to dramatically reverse aging when an animal is within days of death unless they included something that involves estrogen, and they knew if they used the estrogen that women are so afraid of that it would have hit the papers and people would be confused and they'd say, if I take the estrogen I'm going to die too soon because it's going to give me breast cancer. That is an incorrect statement. It was never the estrogen that was the guilty party. It was the synthetic progesterone they gave people like in our birth control pills. So estrogen's gotten a bit of a bad rap. But in HRT, herbal remedy from Thailand, I have a total safe answer that no one can question, that has the added feature of doing everything that the estrogen would be desirable for: bone loss, stopping bone loss, stopping vaginal dryness, stopping insomnia, etc. But I have, in addition to that, because it is an amazing selective estrogen receptor modulator of the beta receptor, I have in this product the ability to actually treat some kinds of estrogen-related cancers, like breast cancer and possibly even some pancreatic cancer. So this is a big story, folks. Bioidentical hormones. So I've now rattled a lot of stuff into your poor head about the idea that since I now know that with my pulsed electromagnetic field and my hydrogen and my zeolite and what I'm taking, I'm going to be living another 10 to 20 years. So I've decided to move on in my discussions with you so that you understand that reaching 96 and feeling as good as I do at 76 is going to take a little skillful managing. And I'm making myself available to do that kind of managing as a health coach for anyone wanting to learn how to try to duplicate my program. Because I really want, this country is going down the tubes, and I want people to really know that it's possible, in spite of being on a very poisoned planet that's going through climate change and the plunging fields of our magnetic energy that are responsible. Without vitamin M, that's what I'm calling magnetic energy, without vitamin M, no actual metabolism can occur. Let's repeat that. In other words, you move to Mars, and if we don't give you a PEMF device, you die. We can do that to you here on Earth. We can make a moo cage where we take away all of the Earth's normal electromagnetic energy that's normally going through your body. But remember, today, what's normally going through your body is between 1% and 2% of what it was at the time of the dinosaurs. So understand why I'm saying to you that not everybody can feel as good as I do, because without vitamin M, that stands for exposure to healthy magnetic fields, which you can do sleeping on a really good pad, Dr. Dean Bonley has with Magnetical Sleep, or you can learn how to share with other loved ones or neighbors a period of time out of a monthly lease of a pulsed electromagnetic field device, instead of paying $480 using it yourself, share it with 3 others, and you have 4 people who get younger. But you can't do all of it without putting all the pieces together, because the vitamin M, the exposure to the magnetic field with the pulsed electromagnetic field device called PMT 100, this device is going to push toxins out of your body. Why? Because your cells, when they are in a magnetic field, start to feel like a young colt. Your cells suddenly have the energy to take in the nutrients and push out the toxins. So you really want to know what is in Bioenergy C, because there is not another competing product on the planet. That's why it's the most expensive, so it's not a vitamin C product. It's a vitamin C delivery system with the most expensive form of aloe vera in it, and it has in it at the same time, it has the trimethylglycine, methylsulfonomethane, and what we want you to understand is that you can prove scientifically that that stick, when you wet it with your urine, will go within 60 seconds to a bright yellow color only with regular use, a minimum of twice a day, of Bioenergy C. Now, all I can tell you is, if you learn what this means that I'm giving you electrons to help your body solve the daily problems of healthy metabolism while taking in huge numbers of toxins, which can only be neutralized with high levels of C, and you can't get high levels of C unless you get that stick to go to that yellow color, which is 100 milligrams of vitamin C in your urine, and you can't have high levels of C in your urine unless you have high levels in your blood, and you won't get high levels in your blood unless the vitamin C is so easy to take that it doesn't tear up your stomach, so that you take the recommended dose of at least a slightly heaping teaspoon either 2 or 3 times a day. And the more you keep yourself in this range, I don't care if you're fighting cancer or Alzheimer's or what you're fighting or just aging, you're going to be winning the fight far better than anybody who doesn't get the story. Now, this story gets complicated because this vitamin C, in order to go into your cells, we have to get it transported in. And I've indicated to everybody that when you are lucky enough to share with somebody, a doctor that owns a PMT device called PMT 100, go to PEMF.US to learn more. But these $20,000 devices can be used, obviously, by a family of 4, and they can have one living across the driveway that's got somebody in the house with autism, and somebody across the street's got somebody with cancer, and somebody else got Alzheimer's. So anybody who gets exposed to PMF is going to start raising the electromechanical and magnetic energy of the cells so that provably you have high levels of ATP. And with high levels, that's adenosine triphosphate, you have the ability to push toxins out and take nutrients in. But all the other vitamin C's that you can buy anywhere else do not have any of these features. They don't have the ribose included. They don't have what we call the beet metabolites, and they don't have the very special tricks that we've done with the essential sugars. Now, everybody has heard of a company called Manitech, and they were selling these sugars like mannose and fructose and xylose, and these do unique things. Now, what we found is that these essential sugars are actually one of the ways that we handle cell signaling. What in the world is that? Well, there's an antenna on cells, and that antenna uniquely is able to communicate with these sugars, and the net result is by our adding this to the Bioenergy C, we were able to do things that no other Bioenergy C ever did, and with the documentation that at parts per billion we were still provably showing major real antioxidant activity, not the nonsense that they call ORAC value when they sell you acai juice instead of noni juice. That's all for the children. That is not where I'm at. Because with those so-called high ORAC fruit juices, you're getting some polyphenols and you're getting some useful things, but I'm talking about a whole nother level of sophistication. And we can prove that, as you will see in a couple of seconds, with a few more slides. So I need to make sure that you understand that your cell membranes, which you know are made out of things like cholesterol, but they don't care. They're going to give you something to lower your cholesterol because they don't think that the good Lord had any purpose in mind when he had cholesterol in our bloodstream. In fact, cholesterol is a protective molecule, and it tends to go up in many people when it needs to help protect you against free radicals. But since they don't know that, they're going to keep putting people on a drug, and the day will come that just like they're now starting to sue everybody who gave you the nonsense Fosamax, telling you that that was a great way to have stronger bones. The day will come that they'll be suing everybody who gave you Nexium because that was not a good way to get rid of an ulcer. I mean, the day will come that some people are going to collect from these statin companies because they are out of control when they think it needs to be added to the drinking water of everybody in the nation as though they have something totally safe, which it is not. So I tend to go the more expensive way because this way you actually have to buy healthy supplements to optimize the functioning of your body's metabolism rather than killing a system in your body that they do with statins. But I prefer supporting my body in its normal healthy function. So one way I do that is with ascorbate, but it has to be sodium ascorbate. It takes the sodium to help us get the vitamin C inside the cell. Remember, a lot of people are taking supplements and not showing much benefit. You see, I mean, sometimes they laugh at us. They say, well, stand in front of the health food store and look at what the people look like. Yeah, understand the people at the health food store have given up on mainstream medicine because they couldn't help them at all. At least they're trying to learn. I've spent millions of dollars being in conventions around the world, and I do have a real understanding of how all this fits together. And the poor people going in the health food store, they're at least trying. They haven't given up, and they know that the drugs are not helping them, and the doctors they're seeing who are pushing those drugs in those 7-minute visits are not helping them either. So what I have to make sure is that everybody starts thinking where I'm thinking, and that vitamin C donates electrons. So I want you to see that word, because if vitamin C is an electron donor, wait until you learn what you can do with the H-. We're talking about electrons to the nth degree. And then learn what happens if the cell has a membrane potential that you restore because you expose yourself to a magnetic field with a PMT device called PMT 100, which is a pulsed electromagnetic field. And if we even get you for 10 minutes, 3 times a week, then the items I am discussing here, like the H-, the Zeogold, and the Bioenergy C, can really do for you what they're doing for me. Because I will have raised your cell membrane potential enough that through a process called bioporation, you'll actually start utilizing these nutrients that right now many people swallow them and they're still not getting the bang for the buck. We know we're on the right wavelength, but we're just not seeing the changes that I'm talking to you, that I'm seeing and feeling. I am getting the whole picture of what it's like to feel fantastic. So hydrogen electrons, where else could you get an electron? Well, maybe stick your finger into the light socket. It's a little bit overdose. So what happens if we have somebody getting H-? They're going to be getting a large number of electrons. And you can't do a pulsed electromagnetic field that doesn't always come with electricity, because all magnetic fields always induce a weak microelectric current which can help cells talk to each other. So as good as PMT is, it can only handle things if you have the nutrients there for the cells to then take up, and the Zeogold to help the body, along with the other ingredients in my power drink, like the green, organic green, the maca, the Beyond Fiber, to help pull the toxins out. Because when the cells feel good, You actually can see people get a flu-like syndrome or get a big skin rash for 2 or 3 days called a Herxheimer just from being treated for a little bit too long with the first couple of treatments with the pulsed electromagnetic field, because cells, when they feel good, they're going to say, I've wanted that toxin out of here, and it releases it, and the net result is you can have a healing thing called Herxheimer. So what am I got up here? I want to make sure everybody understands that we're talking about massive amounts of vitamin C. Now that's where I'm trying to change the game for you, because as a licensed physician, having worked with Linus Pauling, having saved many lives with IV vitamin C, having chosen to lecture around the world about how vitamin C can be an oxidant and an antioxidant and all the things that I try to teach, most of us can't afford to go to the doctor every day and get something in the vein called 100 grams of vitamin C. But if we did, as you'll see shortly, we save lives. But I have to make sure that you understand that one reason I am so convinced that I'm on to the biggest breakthrough that any doctor at age 76 could expect to find is because I have seen all these patients. As you may know, I'm kind of gung-ho in taking everybody off Coumadin because I think that the current treatment of atrial fibrillation, putting everybody on rat poison, is a very, very bad treatment. But I too was born with a AV block, first degree, atrial ventricle. So I was skipping most of my life, at least 50, 60 years, one beat out of every 3. It was beat, beat, skip, beat, beat, skip. Well, I was getting along okay, and everybody thinks I was doing pretty good for 76. But I want you to know that I've now gotten rid of my arrhythmia. And what's hydrogen got to do with that? Well, let's look at the history. I got involved in chelation treatment because it radically changed my life. That's about 38, 39 years ago. By the 8th chelation, I was able to actually run up the side of a mountain instead of going into heart failure, going up one flight of steps as I had for 30 years. Chelation changed my life. After that, another treatment came along, and that was ozone ultraviolet blood, and that helped change my life because all of you have toxins, and none of you have any idea how to get rid of them. If you're not using the program I'm discussing today, you are not detoxing. But you have to plug a new thought into that whole sentence. Hydrogen. That's the main ingredient of the universe. 90% of the universe is made of hydrogen. About 8 or 9% is helium. The rest is the other things you and I study and talk about. So we talk about the car and the carbon, and we can talk about zinc and chromium and fatty acids and amino acids, but hydrogen's kind of deeply involved in everything going on. And so when I met Albert Szent-Györgyi, when he became a speaker in San Francisco to the Orthomolecular Medical Society conference that I was attending some 40 years ago, I was enthralled with this genius who had actually discovered vitamin C. And he said then hydrogen was the key. And you know, we've got a lot of people who thought vitamin O was the answer, and it does little or nothing. You get into what I'm calling now vitamin M with the magnet, and you get into vitamin H with hydrogen, you are talking about a layer of level exponential above anything you've played with. So let's look at it. Hydrogen. Where are you going to learn more? Well, it's pretty simple. You go on Google and put in the word hydrogen. You're going to start to see that all the hydrogen gets channeled into the respiratory chain. So that's the electron transport chain where we have to convert that food and oxygen into the energy that allows me to ride that bike for that hour each morning when I pedal it up and down all the hills for about 10 miles each morning. So hydrogen is the world's most needed nutrient. You're all deficient. How could that be? Well, we have biological terrain analyzer, and we could show that. We don't do well on this hydrogen level. And so there are pools called hydrogen pools, and it's in various organs. But hydrogen is something that takes a little time to study because you've got actually a total of 2 or 3 electrons because, well, actually one is a proton, the positively charged center. Then you can have 1 or 2 electrons, but there's a lot going on here. And so when we get fresh juice, we're helping to pick up on the hydrogen. And that's the sad thing, is you get a pickup, but it disappears too quickly. So how can I keep these benefits going? Well, what we want you to know is that the normal world, mostly doctors can talk pH. They think it's acid or alkaline, and everybody's trying to get well by taking Kangen or other alkaline water. They think that's the answer. Well, of course, Otto Warburg knew it was more complicated. He tried to teach you that cancer only grows in cells that have switched over to a fermentative metabolism. Why would a cell give up the effective kind of metabolism that really creates energy and go to that old fermentative that hardly keeps the cell alive? It's because the cell got poisoned, so the electron transport chain couldn't take and convert the oxygen and the electrons into what you need, energy, to do your day's work. So what's interesting is that when you are using the program I'm describing, the magnet makes anything you treat immediately go strongly into the alkaline field. So I'm actually changing an organ like your heart or your brain, which is why the children with autism started talking. The lady with Guillain-Barré got out of the wheelchair, the patient with Parkinson, that you can watch easily by going to PEMF.US/INFO. You can see the patient with Parkinson, one visit, 80 to 90% better simply with PEMF, pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. So now you're getting down to how come I, Dr. Gordon, had to always take betaine hydrochloride with my meals, because my stomach wasn't giving me any hydrochloric acid. And without HCl, you don't get much use out of your food, and you will certainly be low on magnesium, which alone can kill you. And if you're a woman, you won't absorb your iron very well. So there's a lot here in this story that we're talking about, because I no longer have to carry the betaine hydrochloride with me. The doctor friend of mine, Dr. Jonathan Wright, and I tested everybody's stomach acid, and 80 to 90% of people who think, because their stomach easily hurts after meals, they think they have an ulcer or a gallbladder or something, and most of the time we find they really needed additional hydrochloric acid to break the food down. But now you're getting into a very interesting story, because it's the effect of hydrogen ions on the cell walls. And now you're talking about maintaining the electrical balance. So now we're back moving. Remember, vitamin M stands for magnetism, and we have vitamin H standing for hydrogen. But I can tell you that you can't restore magnetic field without getting an electrical charge. And when you start really thinking about everything that we do, when we try to cure somebody who's otherwise going to die, they have hepatitis B, hepatitis C, they're in liver failure, and we reverse that when we use 100 or 200 grams of vitamin C, but we have to do it daily, time after time, unless you combine all the things I'm talking to you about here, like the H- and the PMT. You might not need as many treatments or quite that high a dose. So why is that? Because it's electrons that we need. It's the electron. So there's a lot to the story. This is the membrane potential, the transmembrane potential. When the cell is diseased, and how do you get a cell diseased? Well, think about it. You were busy doing something and you fell on the steps a little bit and you bruised your left knee. Big deal. Should heal, right? But then you got in the car and you got in traffic and you stuck behind a big bus and you breathed those fumes for the next 2 hours. So now you have an injured knee, which is now getting a terrible dose of all the toxins from the bus fumes. And what's that going to do? Those toxins are going to interrupt the electron transport chain, and those cells are going to go low. They won't have the membrane potential. In other words, they will not be a fully charged battery. And only when everything is a fully charged battery do you have health. When the batteries are way low, you are setting the stage for, as Otto Warburg pointed out, the acid anaerobic environment where the cells become fermentative and they become cancer. But remember, I've lectured to you about all the work with Dr. Kobayashi. Go to my website, put in the word cancer. We have 10,000 patients, 10 years, nobody died of cancer because we taught you what to do to stay healthy on a toxic planet And it was simple things like lowering stress, going to bed a little earlier, simplifying your diet, stopping smoking, and spending some time in a far infrared sauna, maybe using some immune support, and a few little natural details like that. Not going and having both breasts removed because some idiot tells you that BRCA1, BRCA2 means the best thing you can do is take your ovaries out and your breasts off, because that's nonsense, because as Sanjay Gupta is trying to teach you, if you choose to listen on Saturday night coming up to his special on heart disease, he's trying to teach you that, like Dr. Dean Ornish is showing, it's the environment that tells genes whether to express or not. Even if everybody in your family has died young of heart disease, you do not need to. It's how you control the environment. And controlling the environment is what I'm teaching you here. For those of us who have bad genes, as I do, we are going to tell you that I now do genetic testing, and I can do your gene testing. I can do 72 genes for $425. That price is down from over $2,500. So at that price, one of these quick days, all of you will be able to afford what I call the $10,000 pill approach. What is a $10,000? That is an approach where we personalize and optimize everything for you, because if you look at my program on the website, you'll see that I take everything virtually to Longevity Plus cells. That's an expensive way. Now that we're having some genetic testing, I could help you prioritize so you could pick those items that are going to give you the biggest bang for the buck, because unless you've been as sick as I was for 30 years, nobody would do everything that I'm doing. But I'm here to tell you that if you did do everything I'm doing, you don't know how long you might really live, and you have no idea how good you might really feel. So I don't want everybody being tired. I don't want this fibromyalgia, all this stuff. I want to raise your membrane potential. I want to restore the charge to your cells so your cells can take in the nutrients that we can sell you and push out the bad guys. And one way to do that is add electrons. And I told you, putting your finger into the electric light socket is not the best approach. Here's a totally safe way. I can give you 10 to the quadrillion, and that would be electrons from one little tablet that you merely put into one bottle of water, and you let that tablet put out the hydrogen, and you put a nice lid on the jar, and at the end of about 4 minutes, it's all done breaking out hydrogen. Now you shake it, and you have the hydrogen in the water, and now you drink it, and you too might sit back and see an amazing change in your health, because I have everyone who I treat is on magnesium. I know that we have to be more alkaline. I know that alkaline water is not a waste of time. It's just that it's too little too late, and it's not getting at the cause. The cause was your cells needed to have the minerals, which is why I have my friends take Quinton marine plasma, which is a nice way to get sea minerals. Or you can buy other products that are out there. We have all the minerals in my basic multiple. My multiple called Beyond Any Multiple, BAM, is loaded with selenium and zinc and all of the magnesium and the calcium. And the point is that I can go from these minerals to ultra trace minerals. I can then talk about cesium and rubidium, because remember, I own the laboratory with offices in Tokyo and Amsterdam and Boston, San Francisco, that tested minerals on your urine and your blood and your hair and your drinking water. So I know a lot about this mess. So this little tiny tablet can even make fresh juices act like they're, again, good for your body, because that hydrogen is a big deal. As you'll see, there's a lot to discuss here, and we're getting a little late. So we're just going to tell you there's a lot of health benefits associated, and it makes your vitamin C start to get closer to what we do only with intravenous. Because remember, when I give it to you orally, you're only going to absorb about 33% is what you're going to absorb. Whereas it's in the vein, it's 100%. But not everybody's got a vein, or the money to see a doctor and get a vein. So let's put this together. When I take out the bad stuff with the Zeogold, and I put in the hydrogen, and I can mix that and mix it in with the... See, the amazing thing is the three things that I'm telling you right now to be doing is this tablet goes into solution in the water, and the Zeogold says, please open capsule, put contents in water, And the Bioenergy C says, please take teaspoon and add water. Everything I'm teaching you is to take your water to a whole new level. Now, would it help if you bought the world's most expensive water, the Penta water, or are you going to settle for RO water? The point is that we have to have fluid, and it seems to work with whatever you do buy. So I'm just trying to make sure that you understand that we're really on a roll here, because the zeolite, which if you go to I have a whole website called Zeolite Answer, but this is research out of Zagreb, Croatia, where they are proving with research that they are supporting, working even with the Sloan Kettering, that zeolite has these cages, little spaces that act like a magnet to suck up the lead and the mercury, so you don't have to be in the doctor's office having 100 IVs to get the lead, mercury, cadmium, and arsenic out. I can do it slowly, daily, every day of your life. So if you're not on ZeoGold, you are not detoxing. So the heavy metals, which we've proven every one of the heavy metals gets picked up by the right kind of zeolite, and we've shown that you can even have an antimicrobial effect, and as you know from my little program, food infection, genetic heavy metal hormone toxin, you do have an infection. You may not know it. You may not know if it's something is like chlamydia or cytomegalic virus or some kind of candida or XMRV, or maybe that you have Lyme, because no one can prove who's got Lyme and who doesn't have it. So my position is that you need to lower the total body burden of pathogens, which I repeat could be Lyme or chlamydia or cytomegalic virus, and you need to lower the total body burden of toxins, which I repeat can be lead and mercury and cadmium and arsenic and dioxin and PCBs and polybrominated diphenyl ethers. So that's my program in a nutshell. FIGHT, zeolite is a key part of it, and we'll discuss this at another thing, because zeolite's going to reduce cancer risk and act as an so when I mix these three things together, when I mix in that water the most advanced vitamin C delivery system on the face of the earth, Bioenergy C, and the most outstanding, and you have to understand that technically at this point in time there is only one legal competitor to ZeoGold. Lots of people sell zeolite, but most of it was meant for cat litter, and it shouldn't be sold for human consumption because they haven't done the necessary studies. Aura and Longevity Plus have the actual data to prove that this is safe, but we go way beyond zeolite. We add to this glutathione and all our lipoic acid and the humic acid and a small dose of the world's most advanced vitamin C. So every time you open one of these capsules and put it in the water, then drink it, and do that twice a day, you're going to be changing the biofilm, you're going to be changing the toxins in your body, you're going to have a longer life, because provably the cages of the zeolite will help magnetically. They have little pores, little cages, and it fits one atom of lead or mercury, and that way it escorts it out of the body, even better than DMSA and DMPS in many cases. And you don't, I love IV chelation. IV chelation you still want to do. If you can do the short chelation and get that once a month for 20, 30, 40, 50 of those treatments, along with a Meyer cocktail, when you see any of the doctors who belong to my group and do something intravenously, you're not wasting your time. Because all I'm saying is that no matter what you do, if you're just using testosterone topically, you're not getting the effect it is when it's injected. So always know that I'm willing to do telephone consultations. I charge $300 an hour. We can get into the details so that you understand why it's so important to know what can you do with EDTA. I take EDTA every day of my life. It's in my fiber, and it's in my Beyond Chelation. I wouldn't go a day without the oral EDTA, but it couldn't do all the things because I needed the stronger effect of the fiber and the green and the special form of vitamin C and the H and the ZeoGold. I needed everything, because every inhalation of new air is bringing a new level of toxins. Now I can prove things to you very strong here. If you choose to get a test that is really solid science, way beyond any ORAC tests and people just measuring your fingers and telling you what they think your antioxidant levels are, those are toys compared to what I'm now discussing. If I measure your level of tearing down of the membranes of every cell, remember your membranes of every cell are made of cholesterol. That's a lipid, that's a fat. When that fat turns rancid, we have a word for it, lipid peroxidation. And when it's your fats are breaking down, you're dying and getting cancer and getting asthma and diabetes and metabolic syndrome and inflammation and all the bad stuff. So if I can get you to the point that nothing is breaking down, I've made you as though I've armorized your whole body, and that's what I'm telling you I can do. I'm telling you that we can now measure malondialdehyde. And why is that a big deal? Malondialdehyde is proof. This isn't joking. This is solid stuff, and I can measure it in your exhaled air, or I can measure it in the urine, but the exhaled air gives you immediate feedback. So if I measured your air, and for about 60% of all people we test, they're extremely unfavorable. Another 30% are not too bad, and between 5 and 10% are pretty acceptable. So that means there's about 90% of people would clearly be benefited if they understand what I'm now talking about, how to measure in your exhaled air the bad stuff, the malondialdehydes, which are free radical, proof that free radical damage is going on, because they just prove that your membranes are dying and being broken down with rancidity and coming out in the air or the urine. So this is what you would do. You blow up a balloon, and it's amazing where this is going to take you, because this is the beginning of a whole new age. So if we look at this simple test, what we want to do is tell you that if you are in the 800 to 900s, and that's a huge part of the population, you are in trouble. It could even be lung cancer. If you're in the 300 to just at the 500, you are ideal, and that's around 5–6% of most population groups. There could be some healthier groups, and then there's the rest that are in this area. I have been able to prove that we can take you from here to there. And we can do that with what I'm talking to you about, but it's a unique breakthrough because it took the use of the magnet therapy called PMT or PEMF, because that raised the cell membrane so that my amazing hydrogen, zeagold, and vitamin C and oral chelation and power drink could do what they did. So folks, we're going into personalized medicine. I'm extremely excited about it. There isn't anybody who's feeling ill today who couldn't be very improved. I don't care if they're supposed to die in 2 weeks. Obviously, I'm not going to turn those people around and give them 20 years. But anybody, I am telling you, that gets on the program that we're describing, that's why we call it a $10,000 pill, because it's going to be out of your pocket. And you're going to have to do something like genetic testing so we can personalize your program. And you're going to have to do $300 an hour consultations with myself and get a review of your systems and get old blood tests if you can. If you can get old medical records, we'll use whatever we can. But I want you to know that we can read with the $10,000 pill, we'd be reading your entire DNA, your entire chromosome. So that's not necessary, because what we know with this book, David Ewan Duncan was used as the guinea pig by National Geographic when they first measured how many chemicals are within us, and that led to the study on the 10 Americans where all the children are loaded with toxins. This book tells you that he was told at the University of California, San Francisco, as a professor there himself, that at age 50 he was in great health and had nothing to worry about. But they had already measured him for all these toxins at Mount Sinai School of Medicine for, instead of the $4,900 test, they did the $13,000 one. I mean, he was pretty impressed with how many toxins were in him. So then he went ahead and he spent from somebody else's money as a research project another $500,000. But with those tests, he found that in fact he could have died at any time, and he had some serious inborn errors that nobody had told him about. So what I'm telling you is that for $425, we can come very close to doing as good as we could do if we actually read all of your chromosomes, DNA, and moving right into this kind of testing, smart DNA, we'll be able to tell you whether or not you have a body that doesn't get rid of lead and mercury like we see in the autistic children, whether or not you have methylation defects. So instead of being on everything that I take, because I haven't had access, this test has only now become affordable. It previously was $2,500, and remember, none of this is covered by insurance. So I take everything. I'm on thyroid, I'm on everything, I'm on pasta. Anyhow, what I want you to understand is that for the average patient, if you're not using these products, you're not detoxing. And this is really what I call my advanced program, and I want you to have your life filled with this kind of energy. And I want it to be very clear so that you too can enjoy riding on steep hills. Most of my life, I was a cardiac cripple. As a kid, I couldn't go up. I could never be in sports. And as a doctor in medical school, going up a flight of steps was enough to put me in early heart failure. So I'm telling you that knowledge is power. And since you can't afford all this stuff, look at this as another way. Green Med Info, for free of charge, will help you a little bit. $40 will give you a year pass. If you're a doctor, you may want to spend $180 with them, and they will look at everything. If you happen to have a patient that's got breast cancer and diabetes and insomnia and has got inflammation or multiple myasthenia gravis, you can put all that in, and it will go through the entire published literature from PubMed of mainstream literature. It's not going to have all the tricks that we have in fact, but it will cover the mainstream published literature for the herbal, traditional Chinese medicine, amino acid, fatty acid, and other things that no one can remember. So that website is free if you just want to get a single test to put in your symptoms. The rest of you that want to really understand what I teach with my 3,000 members of our School of Advanced Medicine, it's called FACT. And this is Dr. Gary Gordon signing off. We will not be here next Tuesday. I will be at a doctor's workshop, which is the final day of the cancer control meeting going on in Universal City, Sheraton, which is the 35th annual meeting of cancer control. And the following week, it looks like I'm going to be in St. Louis, so I'm signing off until further notice. We appreciate your support, and this is Dr. Gary Gordon signing off.
Thank you, Dr. Gordon. We encourage you to browse Dr. Gordon's website at www.gordonresearch.com. The products that Dr. Gordon has formulated are available through Longevity Plus. Please visit our website at www.longevityplus.com or call 1-800-580-7587 to place an order. We value all of you and thank you for joining us today.